Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens. Welcome. Joining me today, of course, is JT. Welcome back, JT.
Thank you, Marc.
And our guest today, Alistair Kinnear. Welcome back, Alistair.
Hey, Marc.
Yeah, before we went to commercial there, I was right in the middle of a thought, and I was talking about how I helped a friend of mine break a phobia. And I'm pretty confident we got about 99% of it broken, and because she wasn't having the same dramatic response to whatever it is she's got a phobia from. And what I was saying is, when you can talk someone through back and have them re-experience a phobia or a good experience, and you watch them as they're going through it. So, like say, if they're having a phobia, typically it's something they see, and then we go through a number of internal responses that leads, it's like a loop, it's like a program. So let's say it's 3-4 steps, whatever it is, and so you can watch these changes, and then you can get an anchor. And so what I do is I anchored a very empowering mental state in her. And I didn't do as good a job as making it as powerful as possible. It was powerful enough to have an effect. And what I did was then bring her back through the phobic response, and at the appropriate time, I fired off the anchor so that she would experience the empowerment. And it's a very powerful way, in my experience, of being able to change these programs or these loops that we get, and we all get stuck in them. And so the same thing could be done with the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So how would you, so just a little bit more on how you go about trying, changing someone's program on a fight or flight, for whatever it happened to may be.
Well, my favorite example is the example that I use on myself, because I know it thoroughly and completely. I was terrified of public speaking, and I knew, developing my learnings and my training in NLP and hypnosis, I knew eventually I was going to have to do seminars as part of my work. And so this was a really limiting factor for me. I was terrified, and I would imagine at times going out in front of groups of people and just being stopped cold and not being able to, just freezing up. I knew the stuff. I knew where I wanted to go, and I all of the traditional stuff of practicing in front of the mirror and all this other thing, but I couldn't break the back of the rising fear at that point of knowing I was going to walk out. So in studying NLP, Richard Banway, one of the developers, it showed so precisely and elegantly how to, as you say, substitute one strong feeling for another. And so what I did was, I imagined sitting and finding a resourceful experience that I had in my past, and the one that I used was as a soccer player scoring a goal in a particularly dramatic final game I played in as a young person many years ago, and going through that experience over and over as strong as I could, getting the smells of the grass, the sound of the crowd, the feeling of running across the field, the feeling of kicking the ball, and hearing the crowd as it went in the net, and working on those submodalities, that is, the sounds, the sights, the smells, the feelings, attendant to that experience to the point where I was reliving it very strongly. And then associating that as quickly as I could to standing in front of that group of people. And then I added some other stuff, because it's my mind and my role-playing. I added a fanfare and the sound of people applauding and cheering and glad to know that I was about to speak. And so when I did that in my mind, I got to the point where I could get goosebumps in my arms. And I'll tell you, just before you go out and talk in front of a group of people, if you can get goosebumps in your arms, you're in such a resourceful state that people just respond so positively to that. And you can relax and then just begin to talk. And so that's how I overcame an enormous fear of mine, and I began to build my career.
Well, I just drink a lot of vodka before I speak.
Well, that would work too. Yeah.
You make it so much more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot simpler way to do this thing.
just drink a lot of alcohol. Now, I don't drink. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah.
I've taken advantage of what I know with NLP also to anchor certain states and use it like with weightlifting. And what I've done is when I hit a particularly good lift, and I don't get a runner's high like a lot of people do. I can run for 3 hours if I really needed to, and I wouldn't feel good about it at all. But I get what I believe the runners get when I hit a big lift. I mean, when I put a lot of weight overhead or pull a lot of weight off the floor, or you got that. So what I did, because it's a very focused state, nothing else matters except what I just did, and I anchored that to where what I do is I pump my hands, I make a fist, and so when I grab the bar, I start getting into that state. My heart rate goes up and I get focused. And like I said to you earlier, the only time that really breaks me is when somebody walks next to me. And I'm like, didn't you just see me do a clean and jerk or a snatch? What are you thinking walking 3 inches away? So unless something like that happens, I'm very focused and I don't think, and I execute, and it's great. But you could do that with any situation where you can anchor a very like you were just saying, where you're very empowered and very focused, and you can anchor that and apply it to whatever situation you have in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Overlaying one scenario that contains resourceful experiences over top of what you may normally found to elicit a non-resourceful state is a very powerful way of switching one for the other. And you can do that before you go into a job interview, or just about any simple thing that you want to do where you have to be in a peak state. You take some time to relax and remember a time when you felt enormously resourceful, or enormously relaxed, if you will, or enormously good about the thing that you're about ready to do. And then work with it to the point where you're feeling it. You're actually getting what we call a kinesthetic response, or a bodily response. Your heart rate will come up, your breathing will deepen, and your blood pressure goes up, and you feel that vitality within yourself. And
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, that was my thought.
And this is something that's very important for going into court. And one of the things, and I had gotten, I've learned a lot from Bandler and Grinder, and I've spoken with John Grinder. I've been lucky enough, because I do the show, I've been lucky enough to speak with John Grinder on a few occasions, and I still hope to get him on the show. One of the things that I had learned, I've learned a lot, but some of the more important things is, and I believe he was the one that said it, it's all pretend anyway. And so one of the things that I will do is when I go into court, and now it's automatic because I've done it just so many times, and it's become an ingrained pattern with me. When I go into court, I know it's just an act. And all my fears and this, and I can focus, and I can do it, and I can say what needs to be said, and bada boom, I get out, and it's done. And that's really, that really helps. The whole idea, Alistair, that you can put on a mask, if you will, or a persona, and just go in and act. Because most of us can act to a certain, and what you're doing, I guess it's you kind of disassociating a bit, and so it's easier for you to get through and focus on what you're doing.
No, I actually disagree at this point. You're actually fully associating with a resourceful state.
Okay.
You have actually changed your reality. You have actually shifted out of a dissociated state into a new resourceful state. There's no bias towards negative at all. You have fully blown access. You are now full blown into a resourceful state. And you can line up in the coffee shop and decide to get real bored and agitated and look at the servers and go, why are you doing that? Why is this person taking long? Or you can just go inside and listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan play Little Wing for a little while and really